Okay, so thank you for joining us. I can see we've got a range of people from across health, central and local government, and some private sector. And we're really excited to host this webinar today with experts from Agile, which is a UK-based data, digital and AI consultancy, and also Salesforce's Informatica, which, for those who don't know, is a scalable enterprise data management system and also a Gartner Magic Quadrant leader for data. I'll do some further introductions in a moment for our fab speakers. And just to check you're in the right place, we're here to talk about how trusted AI starts with trusted data. And we're looking to give you some practical takeaways, how to make that happen. Okay, quick look at the agenda. This is what we're going to take you through. Just some housekeeping. All attendees are being muted by default. We do want the session to be interactive though, so heads up, we're going to do a poll in a few moments. But if you could put any questions in the Q&A tab, and then we'll go through those at the end of the session. The session is being recorded, and we'll be sending this out to participants. And also, you can use live caption should you wish to. That's available as an option under More, and you'll be able to turn on the captions under language there. So let's do some introductions to our speakers. I'm Katie. I'm the Public Sector Director here at Agile. I've been working with UK public sector for about 25 years across data and digital-led transformations, including organisations like GDS, Office National Statistics, and DWP, and also NHS Digital. I've been around a little bit. Paul, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Katie. So my name's Paul Kearsey. I'm the Head of Practice for Data Strategy and Governance at Agile. Like Katie, I've had a long career working both within the public sector and supporting the public sector, predominantly around technology transformation, and for the last 15 years been focused on data digital transformation basically within these organisations. My experience though is much more with local public services, so worked with a number of large local authorities, worked with a number of combined authorities, worked with blue light services, worked with universities, etc. over the years. So that's me. So over to Jenny.
Thanks, Paul. Morning, everybody. My name's Jenny James. As Katie alluded to earlier, I'm with Informatica. So that's the data management platform that now forms part of Salesforce. I'm responsible for our master data management practice here in the UK. So both public and private sector organisations, and been in the data management space for more years than I care to speak of. But I did start out my career, little tiny snippet there in accountancy. So I am a chartered accountant, and for my sins, one of my favourite things to do with customers these days is to help with the business case and putting together the cost benefit analysis. Yeah, give me a spreadsheet, I'm in heaven. But I'm better now. So without further ado, Katie, take it away.
Okay, great. Thank you. So I recognise that we've got quite a few across people in the public sector. Obviously, this applies to private sector as well. But what is the opportunity? So just as a bit of a reminder, over a year ago, and longer than this actually, but over a year ago, the Department of Science, Innovation and Technology published the AI Opportunities Plan with a really clear mandate from government that government must push hard on AI adoption. The public sector should rapidly pilot and scale out AI products and services. And the aspiration that the AI, because we always talk about AI, but AI is just the tool that does this stuff, right? But that AI will help deliver these types of outcomes. So one of the key outcomes is save money, right? So efficiency, reduce waste. And we've seen that. So once again, Department of Science, Innovation, Technology released an AI tool called Consult, which reduced 75,000 days of effort of assessing public consultation responses down into a mere 2 hours of effort using natural language processing. Another outcome, improved services, fantastic. We all want this, right? Faster, quicker, easier. And a good example of that is Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office, where they use generative AI to provide a 24/7 service for British citizens abroad in their moment of distress, where they could use this conversational AI tool to basically give them answers about their problem situation. So giving them responses in seconds rather than potentially waiting, the previous 3-day turnaround times, waiting to hear someone from the consulate how they're going to help you. Next outcome, make better decisions. Super important for everybody. Be evidence-based, be data-driven, and try and get as real-time as possible. And an example of this is British Airways, where they've used Microsoft AI machine learning, and through that they've been able to optimize their flight paths, being able to save hundreds of thousands of tons of fuel and over $10 million worth of cost. So, I'm sure they're just making more and more on that, and obviously it's been rolled out to different airlines, etc. And lastly, deliver economic growth. So example of this is from a local level is Bradford Smart City, or AI for Bradford digital strategy, as they're calling it, where they're looking and have developed digital twins that will enable resource profiling across the city and use predictive AI so they can become responsive to things like social needs, transport needs, and emergency situations. So we've got some really good use cases here of AI realizing some of these outcomes. But before we go too far into the next few slides, I just really wanted to take a snapshot from the group here. And I've got 3 questions for you, right? So I want to understand, please, if that's possible, please do engage. Where are you on this AI journey? We would like you to rate your progress. 2, if you're a bit lower down on that progress, on that AI journey, if you could put what your blockers are. And then lastly, 3rd question we've got is, conversely, if you're doing really well on this AI journey, then what have been your enablers? And let's share those across the group. We're not going to dive into the results too much here, and we'll open the poll in a moment, but we're going to look at these results a little bit later. And the reason why I want to do this is because I'd like us, as we go through, our speakers, Paul and Jenny, will take us through how to overcome some of those challenges, some of those blockers, and where we can lever some of those enablers. Okay, so let's open the poll. Okay, so the first one, hopefully you should have something pop up on screen, is please rate your journey on this. Please rate your progress on this AI journey. So not started or using it really well. Okay. And have we anybody waiting to do that? Thumbs up or thumbs down if you need a little bit more time on that one. Thumbs up. Any thumbs down? Might be easier. Okay, super. Yeah. Lovely, thank you. Okay, so let's go on to the next question, please. So what are your key blockers? And just really succinctly, short words would be really great. This is going to come up at the moment. You'll see it start to change. There's a bit of a word cloud. So ignore it a little bit for now. We'll come back to it later. Okay. As many as you want. Can see some really good stuff coming in there, so I look forward to having a look at that. Okay. Give a thumbs up if we can move on, or a thumbs down if you need a little bit more extra time. Okay, excellent. Any thumbs down? Yeah, we've got lots of thumbs up. Make sure we get that. Fantastic. Okay, so last question. If you're doing really well on this journey, what's been your enablers so that we can share with the group, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. Interesting ones there. Great. Okay. Okay, same as before. Thumbs up if you've finished, or if you need a little bit of extra time, thumbs down. Okay, anybody need any extra time? Thumbs down. Okay, super. Right, looks like we can move on. So like I said, we're not going to dive into these at the moment, but what we are going to do is we're going to ask Paul to talk to us about why trust in AI is so important. So Paul, over to you, but everybody, we will loop back later for the results of the poll.
Thank you. Thank you. That's really helpful. So why does trust matter? I think let's start a little bit before that, though, in terms of what do we really mean by trust? It's quite a multifaceted thing in the organisations you work with. We can perceive trust from the point of view of vulnerability of AI. So AI, when you introduce it into your organisations, especially agentic AI tools that are working in your environments, they have the capability to do a lot. If you want to understand the impact of this, I've shared an article from Cisco in the chat. Please have a read of it. It's a story about ethical hacking that's happened recently, where ethical hackers have actually deployed some stuff in AI solutions that have been downloaded en masse across organizations. It will really help you understand actually some of these risks that are out there, basically, by deploying these technologies. So that's one element of trust. Can we trust it not to act maliciously in our organizations? There's another element of trust that's really important, which is the trust of motivation. Why are we using this thing? So if you're thinking about it from a staff perspective, if we're not clear on our intent, is there a trust issue around actually, is this replacing me rather than empowering me? Yeah, is this to take away my job? And if that isn't clear, if your intent isn't clear, then trust with the people you're trying to engage in change is going to be low. What's really important, though, in the public sector that we see time and again is the trust element of being accurate. Yeah. You deliver critical services on which the economy and society at large depend. Providing inaccurate information or insights or decisions is not helping anybody. Also, there's an element of working with some of the most vulnerable people in society and getting things wrong with these people in services, or AI is getting things wrong with people in these service environments, presents significant risk and potential harm. So that's not in anybody's intention or want to do that in the public sector. But accuracy isn't everything. Yeah, timeliness and the breadth and quality of decisions also matters as well. So we can't wait to be perfect, basically, all the time. Being perfect and being too late is not a good result, and isn't really helpful in critical services. So all of this sort of comes down to the fact that actually what we have to do is develop solutions and develop AI solutions that actually are impactful and accurate, but are also timely. We can't wait forever to solve all of our data quality issues before deploying these solutions. And this comes down to the fact that realistically, trust really is the currency of transformation. It's not just about end user trust, it's also about your internal stakeholders trusting that this technology is adding value. The only way you're going to build that trust is to start to deliver it to users and start to engage them in its outputs. So again, we don't want to wait forever putting in foundations, just enough foundations to give us the right kind of response to manage and assure the outputs that we developed. And always remember this point, that trust is determined by users. And they think about it in two ways: conceptual trust, that bit I mentioned earlier. Are we doing this for the right reasons? Yeah. Is this actually helping, empowering, adding value? Yeah. And also, does the product work? Well, the only way we can establish those two things realistically is with communications and clear engagement with the first, and by actually delivering stuff in a timely manner with the other. So getting to the point where we're actually clear on things that are going to make a really big impact, basically, and deliver them in a timely way with the right level of foundations, basically, is the way forward in this space. And that's what we're going to talk about through the remainder of this. I'm going to hand over to Jenny now, who's going to start to talk about some of the foundations that we would recommend that you put in place to enable you to take this approach.
Thanks, Paul. Much appreciated. So we've looked at some of the themes around trust, but we know now that certainly in the UK public sector and beyond, data is now viewed as a critical national infrastructure. So we've shifted from data being kind of almost an afterthought to it being absolutely central. And if we're going to shift our experimental AI to agentic AI, and we're seeing more and more of that, you know, the likes of Bobby in the police force, so that we can, as members of the public, you know, use it's a plug, the Salesforce agentic AI within there to answer all of those non-emergency questions. How do I report a burglary and so on, to really improve those services. So as Katie mentioned right at that start, how we improve service and reduce the cost and the resource overhead. But how do we do that? How do we do that effectively? Well, there's a few elements that are absolutely necessary in that data. So one is, how can I get to it and who can see it? So Paul mentioned that trust and security and those elements, and absolutely security and that trust framework is absolutely vital. But actually one of the really basic things is, well, can we get to the data that the AI needs to make those decisions? So looking at that, looking at access to information, unlocking that data for you. Looking at what is the data that we have in our organization. So that's that element there in the top left around catalog. So what data do we have? And we've seen an explosion of cataloging projects in the public sector, specifically in the last probably 18 months, 2.5 years, something like that. Because what we need to do in public sector is figure out what we've got and where, who has access to data, what is it used for, and who should have access to data. Because what we want to make sure that we're building as we build our AI is that layer of, should it have access to that data, and make sure that we build that in from the ground up. And that's really, really important. And then I think probably the one factor beyond all else that I see in every single customer, regardless of whether they're a bank or public sector organization, is data quality. So what is the quality of my data? But not just, is it red, amber, or green, but how can I actually improve that? Because it's all fine to say, yeah, we've got poor quality data, or let's do a cleanup project and we'll spend 6 months cleansing the data and then never look at it again. Because we know, data degrades over time. It's one of those standard things. So how do we make that continuous? Because again, when we look at the government guidelines, it's continuous improvement that we're looking for. And then beyond the quality, how can we make sure that data is unified, so that when my AI model, when I've put into Bobby, I want to report a burglary, it knows that Jenny James is the same person as Jennifer James over here, and that the household is the other people in my family, and this is our address, and it's the correct address, and so on and so forth. So how can we unify multiple data sets into one place that AI can then act on effectively? And then that final piece at the bottom, which is probably, you know, with quality being the top reason for not doing things, traceability and observability is something that's stopping when we talk about reasons why AI projects stop or fail. Being able to trace what happened is one of the key reasons why these don't go live. So it's really important for your trusted AI to have its trusted data that you are able to trace what happened. So, you know, this AI decision was made based on, to my example earlier, Jenny James being merged with Jennifer James into one person at this address. And these are the decisions we made, and this is the data we used, and this is where it came from. So that data lineage, that track and trace, to use old COVID terms, I think it's becoming increasingly important to give us that trusted data. And we're seeing that more and more as we work together, Agile and Informatica. But Katie, back to you.
Thank you. Okay, so we wait to see what these results say. So let's go through and review those if we could. Thank you, Abby. Right, okay. So where are we on our AI journey? Well, quite a lot of you are down that lower end. So we've got a 2.4 average scoring on there. I can say I'm not surprised by that. I think we were probably expecting that. However, for those who have done some of the 4-star, I think, by the looks of it, be really keen to understand the enablers. In terms of main blockers, bear with me. Can I make that bigger at all? Because I can't see that very well. My eyes. I can see data very well. Yeah, super. Thank you. Thank you, Abby. Okay, so data has obviously come out there as a real blocker, which is good because that's one of the main things that we're talking about in this webinar. Let's see what else has got around there. Okay, looks, yeah, so data quality, based data. Someone's doing some medical device, very interesting. Data literacy, data protection, some biases stuff around there as well. That might be something good to cover off. Trustworthy output, absolutely. Someone's put global apps there. Be interested to know a little bit more about that. So if someone can just pop, what did we mean by global apps? If you can just either pop that in the chat or take yourself off mute for a second if you can. I don't know, we're allowed to do, can we do that? No, we can't take it off. Okay, yeah. All right. We'll get a little explanation for that in a moment then. And then in terms of enablers, okay. Okay. So we're assuming the global apps is around data protection export laws, but if it's not, please do let us know. In terms of main enablers, we've got sharing knowledge, absolutely, you know, it's a bit sort of why reinvent the wheel, see what we can do to share, particularly within government, you know, there's a real emphasis on sharing knowledge, sharing code where we can, etc. You know, it's all about efficiency. And other enablers we got there are leadership, absolutely. We will be picking up that as part of the conversation as well. Best practice. I like how someone's put deadline looming. Yeah, so timing, impetus. If it's something that needs to happen, that tends to be a driver, doesn't it? So we've all been there. Okay, really interesting. So Paul, if we can have a look to see, you know, some of those areas as we pass on to you and talk about where to get started.
Yeah, thanks, Katie. It's some really interesting points in there. There's a lot around availability of data and data quality. The first thing I want to talk about, though, is actually you can use AI a lot in environments where it doesn't actually have to access previously received data and previously stored data. A really good example of this is actually the FCDO telephony case that Katie mentioned right at the front of this presentation. So in that environment, the large language model itself is actually being used to interpret unstructured data in the form of the way that somebody leaves a message on a consular answer phone at 2 o'clock in the morning, having lost their passport or something like that. As you can imagine, that message isn't going to be particularly well ordered, structured, and potentially coherent. The large language model interprets, takes the salient points and then points those towards already predetermined answers, basically. So there's no accessing sensitive data in response. There's no profiling the individual. 111 are already looking at a similar approach there, because 111 agents do work that way. They don't look at any personal records. They listen to the person on the call. They establish what the requirements are, and they provide advice and guidance based on that. So the key point here is there's a lot of use of AI where you don't need to use sensitive data. But a lot of the really value add stuff that we know that people in the public sector are trying to do is always going to require to get down to the personal details of people, or case details, or asset details, basically, to build. And so in this case, trying to get into a place where you're immediately building an end-to-end agentic AI that is accessing sensitive information or previous historical information without putting those foundations is going to be risky, and the outputs are probably going to be extremely limited, basically. Where we're seeing success for organizations, they're starting to look at using these types of capabilities for more internal searching. So as I mentioned with the FCDO example, what the large language model is doing is picking its way through unstructured information in the way that in the format of recorded calls, WAV files, basically, for those of you with a bit more of a technical bent. So the same technologies can be used to search for unstructured data in many environments. And one of the areas where we see probably the most amount of unstructured data in the public sector is in files, is in previous PDF documents, Excel files, Word documents, and all sorts of things like that are stored. And that information actually is usually quite rich because it's been through a level of interpretations. It's actually quite often been used to make previous decisions by a number of key stakeholders. So it's been through a lot of effort and work. Yet we tend to store it in SharePoint environments, and it's largely impenetrable. Well, we're working with a number of organizations at the moment in the utility sector, and one of them is we've developed a large language-based model approach for extracting information from dusty old engineering reports that go back over decades about key sites. Now, this is now replacing the activity that engineers used to have to start with, which is literally trawling through all of these records, pulling out key bits of information to do all of the background work to inform a business case for redeveloping a site or maintaining or completely redeploying the capability that's there. So all of those options are being extracted, all the information is being extracted, but also the large language model is then feeding an options paper and taking the engineer to the point where they're truly doing the value add work, the stuff they're paid for, rather than all the administrative work that takes them to the point where they can start to make informed decisions. And in a number of cases where there's lower risk, there's the full report is actually being compiled with just a very quick sign-off process by an engineer. So what we're doing here realistically is using AI to get to unstructured data, to pull the quality of that information out and to use it to supplement the information that exists in other systems. One of you mentioned or I might have been more than one actually, but somebody picked up the point around biases with data as a reason to not look at AI. Well, actually, one of the reasons why biases exist in the data we work with is that it exists in the system processes that we put into our line of business applications. They are built around predetermined processes that we expect people to work through. The unbiased data, the richer data, usually sits in unstructured environments, in the notes that people have made, in recordings, all of that high quality information that tells us a lot about people is quite often lost. Yeah, so being able to penetrate that adds another level of value to our decision-making process. And so we make lots of recommendations here about starting internally and starting to focus on using AI to improve your data quality by opening a lot of this stuff up. I do want to also make a quick point here as well that AI type technologies are used in a number of the tools that we use and Informatica provide to sort data quality. So Informatica's MDM uses a great degree of AI to actually do probabilistic matching, which enables us to actually bring records together more effectively with less human intervention over time. So the machine's learning all the time about the matching rules, what you will accept, what you won't accept. The same with data validation. Data validation is a process of basically pointing large language model capability or other predictive capabilities towards our data stores, looking for errors and actually then analyzing them with best practice. This is the work that human beings don't really like doing and find it quite difficult to do, certainly with the quantity of data that you have. So this capability is built in. So start thinking about actually using AI for symbiotic success. The more that you use it, the better your data is going to get. The better your data is going to get, the more value add you're going to be able to get from AI. So that's really key. So these are the ways that we would recommend people getting started. We talk a lot in this sector about something called think big, start small, scale fast. Yeah. What does this really mean to us? Well, realistically, what we're talking about here is having a bit of an understanding across your organization of all the places where you think these types of technologies, automations, insights, understanding, workflows can add value. Yeah. The reason to try and get a bit of a grip across as many cases as possible is they'll probably all pull on a lot of common data sets. And if we can get those data sets into a place where they're managed, we can deliver initial use cases, but we can scale quickly to the next one. But what we're saying here is don't start trying to fix all of that data out in Christendom. From your long list of use cases, pick one that's a priority, pick something that's impactful, but it's also going to release capacity in your business, basically. Start with that and start delivering through a process that looks something like this, which we're just going to go on to, which is our MVP process. So this process is designed to take new capability like MDM, or take a new capability like deploying a large language model, deploying it in your environment and getting it through to a proven use case in a matter of weeks, not months, basically. It's about being precise in what we want in terms of an output. It's about using convention for that capability rather than just deploying the whole tool at once. So us putting in some convention-based rules on how to deploy it using previous-based templates and approaches like that. Also then putting in guardrails, which a number of you mentioned in the chat, the importance of actually making sure that we have guardrails, and method. So the whole idea is not only are we going to get an output, we're going to get those things delivered through this process. You can see the various sprint stages that we take through this process. So 2 weeks into discovery to establish the actual use case, but also understand the environment which we're deploying it in. 2 weeks in setting up the right environment. A number of you mentioned trust, control, documentation. If we're deploying AI-based technologies, MDM technologies, it is critical that we deploy a sophisticated DevOps approach around that. Basically, what you're doing is deploying software where we deploy rules, processes, conventions, and they need to be documented, they need to be understood, and they need to be controlled, basically. This is a bit of a dichotomy we're seeing with AI at the moment. A lot of public sector organizations have made the decision that we don't want to be developing our own software anymore. We want to buy it. But actually, when you deploy an agent, you have developed some software. You've developed something that is doing something in your organization, and it needs that DevOps control. So setting up that environment is critical. Our approach, though, don't boil the ocean, build it for the specific purpose for which you want to get the output, basically. Get into development, and then 2 weeks in development, and then actually put out a production-ready solution, basically. And what do I mean by production ready? It can be accessed by a user and can be used to solve a problem as part of an output. Does it need to be supported from that point onwards? Of course it does. It's an 8-week development cycle. Yeah. And what we see here is customers can then make the choice of actually, do we want to take this into an environment where it's fully supported and ready to use and reinforced and resilient? So there's more work that follows in that place. Or actually, do we want to use another test case? So we can actually see how we develop that data, how we develop the output, and start to get other people excited in our business. So you get that choice, basically. All the way through this, we deploy just enough governance and just enough design to enable us to get through to that end product. Now, this is all supported by great licensing options from organizations like Informatica. So I'm going to hand over to Jenny, who can talk to you about those.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point, actually, because what you said there, Paul, is we want to have in mind where we want to go. You know, that think big. Let's not think small. We want to get to somewhere that's really important, that's going to make a difference to people's lives. But what we want to do is chunk that up. You know, how do you eat the elephant one leg at a time? And it's the same way with the software that supports it. You know, gone are the days that you know, you had millions and millions of investment and 3-year time frame to deliver. You know, we are literally in, as to your point there on the deliveries that I've seen time and time again that we've done together, we're looking at 3-month delivery cycles, not 3 years. And in order to do that, we've got to have a flexible model for both the implementation processes and resourcing, but also the software as well. And I think the SaaS models and the consumption pricing that we have in Informatica really supports that idea of how can we start something small? How can we give you, whether it's an MVP or a rapid delivery, to support that 3-month cycle, and then enable you to scale up as you go along, so that you're delivering self-funded projects, I used to call it back 20 years ago, when I first started off in data management. And now I don't think it's changed. We're still, you know, we need to deliver things rapidly. We need to show value back to the organization. And I think almost more importantly, as we're delivering these trusted data projects, we need to be able to show the value back to the organization so that they can get that trust in delivering AI. And that, you know, because everybody at the top of our public sector and private sector organizations all want to do AI, but everybody is nervous for very good reasons about doing that. So how can we deliver that carefully and thoughtfully and with rigor to ensure the success of all of our customers going forward? Okay. Anything to add to that, Paul?
No, I think that was a perfect summation, Jenny. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Just to check, are we okay for another couple of minutes? Yeah, super. We've got a couple of questions here. Quite interested to pick up this one. How can highly secure based companies, so defense companies, benefit from AI without risking their data? Paul, have you got a view? Because obviously we do work with highly secure regulated environments and in defense sectors. Paul?
Yeah, absolutely. What I'll do, actually, I'm going to share an article, because I don't know if you've seen it. There's a gov.uk article on exactly how the MOD's guidance for AI success, basically, that talks about how you get the best out of what you can do in public cloud or public AI services and what needs to be done in the MOD cloud, basically, and MOD's own AI services now. So I'm going to pop that link in the chat. People can have a read through that. I think the key thing is to be cautious, basically, be very, very aware of the risks, but also be aware of the things that you can do with unsensitive data. So I'll talk a really good example of this that I know about, that I've worked with. So we did a lot of work with minesweeping detection in a previous organization. And one of the funny things about minesweeping detection is it's all the tool that they use for autonomous fish. They literally put these things in the water and they go around and they map the seabed. But the reality is because they're in the water, they can be intercepted by the Chinese or the Russians or any other hostile agent. They're literally a robot fish swimming around. So therefore, they can't hold or capture or store any sensitive information. They literally just plot things. But you can do a lot with those things. Yeah. So there's a lot of activity that you can do, which we did with large language models, to analyze the information that comes off those that never touch any sensitive information, basically. So there's a lot that is recorded in the MOD space that is deliberately recorded in a way that it doesn't actually collect anything that's sensitive, because in live environments, it's always at risk of interception. I'm going to pop that link in the chat now.
Yeah, fantastic. And I think another key part of that is when we talk about AI and public organizations, when we're not talking about using, your publicly available AI services out there. Please don't use those. Please use your own version sanctioned by your organizations, built within your organizations, and particularly for like places like defense where it's sovereign. So that's what we're talking about. Make sure you're developing in a trusted environment. Okay, I'm conscious of time. We've got one made for you. How realistic is it for organizations to build and maintain trusted data foundations for AI only using in-house teams? Jenny, have you got a view on that at all?
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting question, because especially in public sector, we don't want outside people being involved. And I think in order to be able to deliver these solutions, I think this is about getting that data literacy and training and enablement, because if you don't want external companies coming in and helping you to build these, and we can understand that some organizations don't want or are not allowed to, then it's then about making sure that we've got that enablement and training, and there's an awful lot of capabilities around that whole, data enablement and AI enablement that especially Agile and organizations like yours can do to help you. Katie, Paul, anything that you'd like to add on that topic about what you've done?
Yeah, I think it's a really, really good question. Fundamentally, to help these organizations through the transformation, that there's a point where they have to start to change their operating models around enterprise data management and controls. And for some organizations that exist in the public sector, data is their business. So if we look at people like the ONS, the UK Hydrographics Office, for example, they are data producers. But in those environments, quite often, they're not actually managing their data as an enterprise asset. It's very product focused, basically. So it's in different product environments. Going through a transformation process where we change roles, responsibilities, accountabilities dramatically too early is highly disruptive. And organizations that have gone down that route have usually found it actually terrifically exhausting, and it's slowed down delivery. Where we try and encourage organizations is to start looking at actually aligned to the projects we deliver, starting to deploy more of an agile squad-based approach with roles that will align to permanent roles in the business in time, being delivered through blended teams. So people from outside working with people inside in roles that they're suitable to deliver now, but are also enabling them to grow, to take on more establishment type roles as you're ready to make that transformation. Going too quickly into organizational, especially structural change, is so tempting in the public sector. When I used to work in the public sector, we did used to have a little bit of a joke about the fact that there were 3 ways to solve a problem in our organization. 1, have a meeting. If that doesn't work, have a second meeting. And if that doesn't work, have a restructure. Yeah, the temptation is always to jump to that structural view. Our approach is actually no, develop the function first. Use agile squad-based work, understand the work that's involved, and get to actually changing structures teams later, basically once you've proven capability and have got people excited about the potential.
Okay, great. I'm conscious we're over time, so let's wrap up Q&A for there. However, I'd really encourage everybody who's attended today, if you want to get in touch with us, please get in touch with us. We're always happy to speak to people, always happy to share our knowledge. So you've got our emails there directly. Please drop us a line. If we haven't covered anything, just let us know, right? So thank you all for attending, really much appreciated. I hope you've enjoyed it and found it useful. We'll be sending out the recording afterwards. So, okay, great. Thank you. Have a lovely rest of the day.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone.